Amy, today, let's play games together.
Kenny's loud voice woke up Alex, who I had just managed to put to sleep. The sound of a baby crying, wah, echoed from the next room. You yelled too loudly, and now Alex is awake. I'll go put him back to sleep.
Hey, what about the game? The new one just came out, and I really want to play it with you.
I told you I can't play games for a while. I spent another hour getting Alex to sleep. When I returned to the living room, Kenny was still awake. Seeing him sulking, I felt a little helpless and spoke up. Sorry, Kenny. Want a drink or something? But Kenny didn't respond. I thought maybe he didn't hear me, so I tried again, but still no answer. It seemed like he was ignoring me. Feeling frustrated, I walked up right in front of him. Hey, why are you ignoring me?
Because, Amy, you've changed. You don't want to play games with me anymore. It's always about Alex, Alex, Alex. You're always paying attention to him.
Huh? Alex is still a baby, so of course I have to take care of him. Plus, I'd rather rest than play games. I've explained before that I can't play right now because of late night feedings, remember? I explained to him just how tired I was from lack of sleep and how, if he had complaints, he could help with the housework instead. All right, no more ignoring me, okay? Communication between us is important.
Okay, Amy, I'll do my best.
He said that now, but I couldn't help feeling uneasy. Kenny still didn't seem to fully grasp his role as a father. The anxiety I felt about this grew stronger over time. My name is Amy Smith. I met my husband, Kenny, through a friend's introduction. We hit it off because we both liked games, and before long, we were dating. We got married when I was 29, and Kenny was 28. Our friends congratulated us, saying we made a perfect couple.
Kenny, you found yourself a responsible wife.
That's right. Amy's beautiful, and we share the same hobbies. She's the best wife ever.
Kenny was all smiles, acting lovey-dovey in front of our friends. He put his arm around my shoulder with a carefree grin.
Amy, let's have kids soon. It'll be so fun playing games with our kids.
You're jumping ahead, aren't you? I laughed at Kenny's innocence. I wasn't sure if I was ready for kids, but with Kenny's enthusiastic request, I started to think more positively. A year later, we were blessed with our first child, a baby boy whom we named Alex. When I actually gave birth to him, I found him incredibly cute, and my heart was completely filled. Kenny also smiled happily, gently gazing at Alex. After the delivery, I dove straight into the unfamiliar world of parenting. For the first 2 weeks, my mother, Diana, came to stay with us to help take care of the baby.
Well, I'll be heading back now. I've left some frozen meals for you, so you should be able to relax for a while.
Thank you, Mom. I really appreciate it.
But I'm a bit worried. Will you and Kenny be able to handle everything on your own?
It was understandable that my mother was concerned. While my mother was here, Kenny hardly took care of Alex at all and just went about his usual routine. After work, he'd eat dinner and play games, only occasionally playing with Alex when he felt like it. He didn't change diapers or calm him when he cried. He just called for me. I had hoped that Kenny would take some parental leave, but instead, he said this.
If Diana's coming, then I'm not needed, right? Let's just leave it to the pros.
I scolded him, asking whose child he thought he was talking about. But he just avoided it with, I can't do it. He had wanted a child so badly, but now he hardly helps at all. Since he said he wanted to play games with our kid, maybe Kenny had been imagining a child who was older. But a baby can't suddenly grow up that fast. Kenny's "I want a child" actually meant "I want a playmate for games." I laughed at my mom's worried voice. "Well, I'll manage somehow."
Just don't overdo it, okay? Your dad's also worried. Call me anytime if you need anything.
"Yeah, thanks." My mom left, looking just a little bit worried. As soon as she was gone, Kenny leaned in close to me, speaking in a sweet tone.
Well, finally, just the two of us. It's hard to relax when Diana's around. Hey, Amy, how about we go out for dinner tonight?
Kenny said something outrageous. "You were just lying around eating the meal my mom made for us, and now you want to go out? We have a newborn. There's no way we're going out to eat. And it's not just the two of us. It's three. You, me, and Alex. We're a family now, and we have to handle things together. Do you get it?"
Yeah, I get it. I was just joking, Amy. Don't look at me like that.
It was hard to tell if he was really joking. I made sure to remind him seriously. "Kenny, no more acting like we're just a couple. From now on, you need to act like a father and take care of Alex too."
Yeah, Alex has joined my life party, so I'm gonna level up my skills and abilities to be the best dad.
Please don't bring your game brain into this. Kenny's carefree attitude was starting to wear on me. I had married him for his bright personality, but as a father, he seemed a little unreliable. A few months later, the postpartum life turned out to be even harder than I had imagined, and I was completely exhausted. As for Kenny, I didn't see much growth in him. In fact, he sometimes criticized me for taking care of Alex all the time, possibly because he wanted to go back to our old fun times. I was too tired from postpartum recovery to deal with that, but Kenny still wanted attention. It was hard to tell who the real child in the house was.
You've been taking care of Alex nonstop. Why don't we leave him with your parents for a bit and go on a date? We could go to a restaurant or a movie or something.
I can't leave him for long right now. Alex needs breast milk, and if I don't feed him, my chest gets really painful. But how about a walk in the neighborhood? We could do a walking date.
That's not a real date. I want to go out with you alone, just the two of us.
Kenny was acting like Alex had taken me away from him. Sometimes he would even ignore me, trying to teach me a lesson. But when that happened, I would firmly scold him and tell him not to do it again. "Listen, don't ignore me anymore. Communication between us is important."
Got it, Amy. I'll do better.
For that moment, Kenny seemed to reflect on his behavior, so I eventually forgave him. But to think he still hadn't grown as a father. Today, Kenny went out to buy a new game. I was completely worn out from taking care of a newborn by myself. In the midst of all that, my mother-in-law came from far away to visit Alex. My father-in-law had passed away, and my mother-in-law now lived with my sister-in-law's family. My mother-in-law, meeting Alex for the first time, was completely smitten.
Oh, he's so cute. I wonder if he looks like Amy? He's got such big eyes.
Thank you, Susan. My mother-in-law is such a kind person. Our relationship had always been good, even before I got married. When she saw my face after not seeing me for a while, she raised her voice with a bit of concern.
By the way, Amy, you've lost quite a bit of weight, huh? You don't look too good. Are you okay?
I'm fine, just a little sleep deprived. To keep from worrying her, I tried to act casual, but next to me, Kenny folded his arms and spoke up.
Amy, you're trying too hard. You should ease up a bit. It's always Alex, Alex, Alex.
Well, what can I do?
Yeah, it's your first time as a parent, so of course, you're putting everything into it.
Kenny's mother smiled wryly at him. Having raised children herself, she probably understood the struggles I was going through. But Kenny, as usual, didn't get it and said something completely off the mark.
But don't you think it's fine to just let him cry it out? In Scandinavia, they say it's normal. Amy, you're being too serious. You keep turning down my offers to go out for a date, always saying it's because of Alex. Mom, you tell her.
Kenny probably meant to vent, but his mother's smile instantly faded.
Let him cry it out. A day to relax.
Yeah, exactly. That way, Amy could get refreshed.
Kenny said proudly, but his mother's expression turned stern.
Have you ever taken care of Alex so that Amy could get some rest? Have you helped her with anything?
What? That's...
How about you, Amy? Has Kenny been taking care of things at home? Helping with the housework and the baby?
She turned to me, asking directly. I was so exhausted from childcare that I answered honestly. He doesn't do much. I handle everything, and he's never even changed a diaper. Actually, I've been pretty tired lately.
Well, I can't take paternity leave, and Amy is better at changing diapers than me.
Kenny tried to jump in, but his mother shot him a sharp look, silencing him.
What are you talking about? If you're not going to change diapers, then at least help with the housework. And besides, there are plenty of things you, as a father, can do in childcare besides breastfeeding. Before making excuses, you should be practicing.
Well, I just...
No more excuses. What are you, a grown man, doing?
She yelled at Kenny and then turned to me with a serious face.
I'm sorry, Amy. Kenny just doesn't have a clue about being a father. I'm ashamed as his mother.
It's not your fault. This is Kenny's issue.
Geez, why are you both treating me like I am half a man?
Kenny was upset, but I was so relieved that his mother was on my side. What made me feel even better was that she stood up for me, speaking directly to him.
If you ever need anything, just call me, okay?
I sincerely thanked her for her concern and felt sad to see her go. That day, thanks to my mother-in-law's firm words, Kenny seemed to reflect on things and started to help out more around the house.
I can do it too.
He started helping with laundry, washing dishes, and cleaning a little. There were still plenty of things he couldn't do without being told, but compared to before, this was a big improvement. I was thankful to my mother-in-law and felt motivated to keep trying with Kenny. By the time Alex turned 1, Kenny had learned to help with household chores to some extent. However, there were still some things that concerned me. Kenny still didn't take much responsibility for playing with or caring for Alex. Sure, Alex was still a baby and couldn't play well yet, but I thought Kenny could at least change a diaper or feed him. But Kenny said something childish.
I'm too scared to do that. I'm not confident I can do it right, and diapers smell bad.
It seemed like my mother-in-law's scolding had lost its effect over time. And in the midst of all that, Kenny once again suggested going on a date. He invited me to a private restaurant where children were allowed, thinking Alex could join us. Can Alex come with us?
Yeah, it's a private restaurant, so we won't have to worry about other customers. Plus, our anniversary is next week, right? Let's enjoy some fancy food.
Fancy food. That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. With my upbeat response, Kenny seemed pleased and smiled happily. I wanted to enjoy the delicious food too, but more than that, I was happy that Kenny had planned something with Alex in mind. It made me feel like Kenny was growing as a parent, and I could see a glimmer of hope. But on the day of the outing, Alex's health suddenly took a turn for the worse. He developed a fever from the morning, and going out for a meal was out of the question.
What? The restaurant is canceled. What are we going to do? A same-day cancellation means we'll be charged 100%.
There's nothing we can do about that. We need to get Alex to the hospital quickly. Alex's body was burning hot. The sudden change in a baby's condition can be life-threatening, and it was really scary. But Kenny said something unbelievable.
Why don't we just leave him with my parents and go by ourselves? A fever is no big deal.
I lost my temper and shouted, "What do you mean by that? Are you even a father? Our child is sick and you're talking about going out to eat. That's not something parents should do."
What? You don't understand how much I was looking forward to today. It's always about Alex. But today is our wedding anniversary.
Anniversaries come every year. Right now, I'm worried about Alex's health. I couldn't deal with Kenny anymore. I quickly put Alex in the car and rushed to the hospital. After the examination, I was relieved to hear that it wasn't anything serious. Alex would need an IV for a while, though. Even during this busy time, I kept Kenny updated on what was happening. But my calls went unanswered, and I got no replies. I began to feel uneasy as my messages were marked as read, but got no response. Even so, when Alex started feeling better thanks to the IV, I felt a great sense of relief. Alex and I were finally able to go home. Because it had taken so long, it was already late. I thought Kenny must have been worried, so I called out to him as soon as we got home. "Kenny, I sent you a message. Did you see it?" Kenny was lying on the couch and glanced at me briefly, but he quickly turned away and left the room. I was furious at his behavior. Even though he knew from my message that Alex was okay, he didn't even show a hint of concern for our child. That attitude was far from what I expected from a father. But Kenny's immaturity didn't end there. For an entire month, Kenny completely ignored me. "Good morning, Kenny." He ignored me. "Do you want jam or butter on your breakfast bread?" He ignored even the basic things, acting like I wasn't there at all. I couldn't believe how badly he was handling a simple marital argument, and I was deeply shocked. We had talked so much about the importance of communication in marriage. Instead of growing, Kenny seemed to be regressing, and it made me sad. What was even worse, Kenny's terrible behavior wasn't just toward me. He wouldn't comfort Alex when he cried and showed no reaction. After meals, he locked himself in his room and played video games all the time. I realized something had to change, so I decided to speak to him from outside the door. "Hey, Kenny, want to have some snacks together?"
Silent.
There was no response. But if I listened closely, I could hear the sounds of him playing a game inside. He was ignoring me while participating in an online game. If that was how he was going to be, then I let go of the door handle and walked away. At this point, there was no turning back. I gripped my smartphone tightly in my hand. I had no intention of giving this husband another chance. What Kenny deserved now was punishment. Having prepared in advance, I carried out my plan. Afterward, I quietly left the house. I packed the bare essentials and went back to my parents' house with Alex. Kenny, who had been holed up, must have noticed right away, but I didn't hear from him that day. He was probably too stubborn to reach out. He finally contacted me the next day. As his calls rang again and again, I sighed and picked up the phone. "What is it calling me now?"
Amy. Well.
Kenny seemed confused. and his words didn't come out smoothly. After a pause, he managed to say one short phrase.
What are you doing right now?
I couldn't help but chuckle and replied, Huh? You haven't figured it out? It's your favorite app.
Why are you on this app?
Kenny's voice was frantic. By now, I was sure his phone was still open to the message screen with me on it. Of course, he had been talking to me without even realizing it was me. The truth was, Kenny had been playing with girls on a different app disguised as a game. I had found out about it a few months ago. I noticed that the app didn't look like a game at all when I caught a glimpse of Kenny's phone screen, so I got suspicious and decided to sneak a peek while he was sleeping. I felt guilty at first, but the moment I found the evidence, that guilt disappeared. The app he had opened wasn't a game. It was an app meant for messaging between men and women. Kenny had signed up for this app and had been messaging young girls who liked games. He was accessing it frequently. In fact, he had already met up with some of them. I was shocked and collapsed when I saw it. If it had just been about games, I might have been able to tolerate it. But to find out he was cheating. However, I wasn't going to just wallow in defeat. My patience had long run out, and I started to think about how to punish him. I saved all the proof of his infidelity as screenshots and even hired a private investigator to gather more evidence. But that wasn't enough to calm the anger inside me. So I also signed up for the same app using a fake name and contacted Kenny. Pretending to be a college student, I easily hooked him in. Kenny, not realizing he was talking to me, sent me a message like this.
So Alice, you're in your second year of college. Being young is great. Playing games all day long.
But you play games too, Kenny?
I do, but I want to play more. Too bad my evil wife won't let me.
I wanted to snap back at him, calling me the evil wife, but I held back and continued the conversation. Kenny's messages were filled with blatant ulterior motives, and I was disgusted. Meanwhile, the life of being ignored and fighting started. Kenny explained his reason for ignoring me in a message.
I'm ignoring her so she'll realize how hurt I am. It's her fault for ignoring me first and always focusing on the kid. That's why this is happening to her.
No, that's so mean.
While I gave a response in agreement, my insides were boiling with anger, realizing that Kenny was ignoring me with such childish thoughts. Finally, I decided to leave the house. Yet, Kenny continued to casually message other women. Using a fake name, I calmly replied,
Didn't your wife leave the house with your kid yesterday, right? And yet, you're still messaging with me. Is that okay?
It's fine. It's fine. She's clueless and hasn't noticed anything.
I heard a snap, like a blood vessel breaking. I revealed myself.
Actually, it's already obvious. It's over between us.
Ha, Alice?
It's Amy.
At that, Kenny's messages stopped, and a call came through. At first, I didn't even want to pick up, just staring at the persistent calls. But after a while, I finally dragged myself to answer. By now, I had completely lost interest in Kenny. Kenny, let's get a divorce. I said it coldly, and Kenny desperately clung to me.
We can't get a divorce. That app, I was just looking for some gaming buddies. It's not an affair.
Then why is it that all the people you're messaging are women? And you met up with them too, didn't you?
Well, it was just a lapse in judgment. It happens to guys. You're the only one for me. Come on, Amy.
Kenny, not giving up easily, I stayed on the call and sent him a few pictures. They were screenshots of disgusting messages from when I was messaging Kenny under a false identity. The messages I sent said,
I'd like to go on a date with you, Alice. I'm totally over my wife. Maybe I'll just go out with you. Hey, can we meet up? I'm free whenever.
it was undeniably incriminating. Kenny, seeing the images, must have gone silent on the other end, unable to speak. If only he had shown this kind of desperation toward his family. I closed the screen with the disgusting messages and sighed. Can you still say it was just a lapse in judgment? It's been far too long for that. Anyway, whether it was a lapse or not, I have solid proof of infidelity. Divorce is the only option.
Please don't say that. We're not getting anywhere on the phone. Where are you right now?
I'm at my parents' house.
All right. I'm coming over right now.
Kenny came over to my parents' house, but he was walking straight into a trap. Kenny was about to face my furious mother.
You really had the nerve to come to my house after hurting my daughter so much.
No, Amy misunderstood. It was just a marital argument.
Kenny was still trying to play innocent, but there was no one here to back him up. My mother gave Kenny a cold glance and opened the door to the room next door. Kenny's eyes widened when he saw who was inside. Standing there with an angry expression were two of Kenny's relatives. My parents had already informed my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, Mary, about the situation, and they had come over.
Mom and Mary, why are you here?
Of course I'd know about it. I live with Mom. I came here to apologize for my useless brother.
Mary glared at Kenny. Like my mother-in-law, Mary had a gentle yet strong demeanor, and Kenny couldn't talk back to her any more than he could to his mother. I was really glad that Mary had come today. Kenny shrunk under the gaze of my mother, mother-in-law, and Mary. My mother-in-law and Mary relentlessly scolded Kenny.
Is it true that you ignored Amy for a whole month?
What do you mean? We just had an argument, that's all. Sure, a month is long, but the cause of the fight wasn't just me. We both had a part in it, right?
A part in it? Was it because you canceled the dinner plans? That wasn't Amy's fault.
My mother-in-law turned to me and asked, "Isn't that right?" So, I explained again, in front of everyone. Kenny got upset because Alex's fever caused our long-awaited dinner to be canceled. After hearing the explanation, my mother-in-law was completely shocked.
Of course you prioritize Alex when he's sick. Kenny, you're a father now. When your kid is sick, it's natural to sacrifice a few things. Stop acting like a child yourself.
But I was really looking forward to it. It was our anniversary. I made a reservation, and I was excited. Then the timing was off, and Alex got sick. I'm the one who needs some understanding.
There's no baby who can control their health based on your convenience. I'm so embarrassed by you.
Looking like she couldn't take it anymore, my mother-in-law covered her face with her hand and lowered her head. However, Kenny, who clearly didn't understand anything, looked at me with teary eyes.
This is all because I love you, Amy. I wanted our anniversary to be perfect.
Kenny still wasn't able to accept our divorce, so he was saying things like this. But even though he said such insincere words of love, it was obvious they had no substance. About that, I also have something to say.
Huh?
You didn't cancel the reservation at the restaurant. You actually went, didn't you? Who did you go with? At that, Kenny turned pale. The reason for this month-long silence was the restaurant reservation issue. However, the order wasn't canceled, and Kenny sneakily went to eat. This happened while Alex was suffering from his illness, and I was exhausted from taking care of him. Apparently, he thought this hadn't been found out, but he was careless. I knew about this betrayal as well. I was worried if you paid the cancellation fee properly, so I reached out to the restaurant. They told me that you actually showed up to eat.
What?
They said you came with someone else. Kenny, you went with someone you met on that app, didn't you? I guess the person he went with randomly, but it turned out I was right.
Ugh.
Kenny groaned. He quickly started to make excuses in a panic.
Well, I didn't want to waste the cancellation fee. I was looking forward to the fancy food, and I didn't want to miss out.
It was not me, but Mary, who raised her voice at Kenny.
Unbelievable. You went to have dinner with your mistress on your anniversary, while the kid was suffering from a fever? While your wife was busy taking care of him? What's wrong with you?
I didn't go with a mistress. I mean, with someone from my gaming buddy.
Someone you met through a messaging app, right? Could you accept that if you were in Amy's place, you wouldn't, right? I can't even believe it. I feel so sorry for Amy that I could cry. Kenny, apologize to her.
Kenny, overwhelmed by Mary, collapsed to the floor. He flattened himself like a gecko and lowered his head. But a superficial apology didn't touch my heart. I extended my hand to Mary, who was kneeling as well, and said only to her, "It's okay, Mary. I'm leaving Kenny."
What? Amy.
I've realized something. I don't need a husband who ignores his wife and kids to hang out with games and apps. At this, my mother-in-law agreed.
Yes, I completely agree. Let's divorce him. We'll make sure he pays the alimony and child support. Don't worry, Amy.
Thank you so much, Susan.
No, I never said it was okay.
I ignored Kenny's voice and thanked Mary. Mary, thank you for coming all the way here.
No matter when, you can always rely on us. Even though you're divorced, Alex's grandmother's house will still be here. My kids are looking forward to playing with him, so they can't wait for him to come over.
Then why is the divorce already decided? Don't ignore me.
Everyone ignored the noisy Kenny, and we started discussing what would happen with Alex and me. After a while, my mother, who had been watching, spoke up.
Amy, your dad's finally home.
Great timing.
Oh, John.
Of course, my dad, John, wasn't going to sit out of this conversation. Having heard everything, my dad walked into the living room, immediately sensing the situation, and smiled.
I just got the divorce papers from the city office. I also picked up the change of address form. Should we fill this one out too? We need to bring all your things over here as soon as possible.
Thanks, Dad.
What?
Kenny couldn't even get a word in from my dad anymore. I took the divorce papers from my dad and quickly filled them out with a pen. Kenny, who was anxiously watching, screamed with desperation.
Amy, everyone. Come on, listen to me already. Stop ignoring me. Don't ignore me.
I finished filling out the divorce papers. Ignoring Kenny, who was about to cry, I thrust the papers at him. Now you understand how painful it is to be ignored.
Ugh, Amy.
Kenny was sniffling with a runny nose. Even if he cried like this now, I didn't feel any sympathy left for him. I had to endure being ignored for a whole month. But I can't take living like that, especially when I'm shown such disloyalty. So, you'll sign the divorce, right?
Yes.
Finally, Kenny raised the white flag and signed the papers. My parents and my mother-in-law, who were on my side, watched. This is how Kenny ended up leaving our family party all on his own. It was the inevitable result of his own actions. After that, we went through the divorce smoothly. Alex and I moved to my parents' house and began living peacefully. Luckily, Alex was still young, so he didn't have to experience the shock of the divorce. At one point, Kenny had told me he still loved me and wanted to rebuild our relationship. But now I'm glad I didn't choose that path. That's because a small detail was revealed later. I found out from my mother-in-law that Kenny had spent a huge amount of money on in-game purchases.
I started managing his account, and then I noticed a lot of money was being withdrawn every month. Some months, he spent up to $1,000 on in-game purchases. I thought this couldn't go on, so I had it canceled and stopped him from paying.
Really? Thank you, Susan. I hadn't been paying attention to the money movements, only focusing on his affair, so I was grateful for her actions. If I had chosen to rebuild at a moment of confusion, I might have ended up in even more financial trouble. Thinking about that gave me a chill, and I'm even more certain that getting a divorce was the right choice.
As for the child support, I'll make sure it's paid on time, so don't worry. By the way, have you received the alimony yet?
Yes, I've received it.
Good to hear.
I thanked my kind mother-in-law and hung up the phone. Kenny is now living alone. Before we got married, Kenny lived with his parents, and now he's struggling with the reality of living by himself for the first time. Cooking, laundry, cleaning, and even just getting up alone in the morning are all difficult for him. Until then, Kenny had been pampered by his parents and his sister's family taking care of him. After we got married, it was me. Kenny, who had always been in a position where someone took care of him, finally had to stand on his own. However, the money is still in the hands of my mother-in-law. I thought to myself that the road to complete independence would be a long one. After that, Alex grew up happily under the watchful eyes of his kind grandparents. Now he happily goes to elementary school and enjoys his days. He occasionally meets with Mary and gets to interact with his cousins. Seeing Alex having fun, playing with Mary's husband, makes me feel a little guilty. I once worried if he felt lonely without a father and asked him about it.
I'm not lonely at all. I've got Grandpa and Grandma, who I love. And I've got you, Mom, who I love too.
Thank you. I love you too, Alex. I hugged him tightly, and Alex returned the embrace. Being a single mother has brought more challenges, but surrounded by Alex and my parents, my days are filled with more smiles than before. I smiled alongside Alex, hoping that these happy days would continue.